So I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of Monday, September 24th, 2018. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Administrator?
Your Worship, there's two changes from staff. There's late item 18.1 regarding the Community Resilience Investment Program as item 18.1. And also item 8.1, which is the permissive tax exemption bylaw, is going to be removed from the agenda, and it'll appear later on in October, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anything from council? Seeing none. Any conflict of interest? I actually have one, and it would be under correspondence. It would be number 5 under correspondence. If we speak to that, I would be in conflict. Okay. Do we have anything, Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thank you, Your Worship. There is a letter in correspondence. If it were raised regarding the college, I would have to step away.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? So just before we start, we're excited to see the new group of students here and our UBC attendee as well. So welcome to council. I believe last year there was an item that came up almost the first council meeting you were at and was completed at the last one that they attended. So you're going to learn a lot, and we're really excited to have you here. Talk to people at the UBCM about the students coming to council and being like a shadow council. And I have to tell you, people couldn't believe it. They were pretty excited. Wow, you have your youth involved. And so thank you, Councillor Lavery. And but welcome to all of you. So we will get started then. Administrator?
Your Worship, under presentations, item 5.1, we have Victoria Olinick from the BCSPCA.
Okay. I'd like to come forward and welcome to council. Is that a microphone on?
No, I don't think so.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor Cooper and councillors. I'm really pleased to be here. My last presentation to you was in January when we rolled out a large spay-neuter program, free program for the community. So we've since completed it in record time. So about the BCSPCA, may I use the slides up top there? Is that going to be larger for folks to see, or does it stay like, it's going to stay like that? Okay. Okay. So about the SPCA, we were established in 1895 by provincial statute, as you may know, for the creating the act, the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. Obviously, there was a need for it. Our mission and vision is to protect and enhance the quality of life for domestic, farm, and wild animals in BC. It's not just dogs and cats. Our vision is to inspire and mobilize a society and to create a world in which all animals enjoy at a minimum the 5 basic freedoms. And it's similar to humans, where we need freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from pain, injury, and disease, freedom from distress, freedom from discomfort, and freedom to express behaviors that promote well-being. That's very standard, basic care at a minimum. So out of all the animals that our branch takes in a year, our average every year is about 72% of those are kittens, and many are adult cats as well. Cat overpopulation is a huge issue in BC. It is in Salmon Arm. That's a common knowledge. Cats are often domesticated pets, but treated as if they're wild animals. They roam at large. They're breeding very rapidly. So we want to address the cat overpopulation problem. Right now, at this branch, we have a small branch. We have 1 full-time person, that's me, and 5 part-time staff and a number of volunteers. Our organization is based on volunteers. We couldn't do it without volunteers. Around the province, we have about 5,000 volunteers and only about 490 or so staff. So we really rely on helping hands. So general costs for animals include spay, neuter, microchip, parasite control, medical treatment. A lot of animals come into us needing dental care, or they're flea infested and whatever, and it costs time and money, obviously, to take care of them. In spay and neuter, for example, just to spay and neuter them is over $50,000 a year. And it costs me, our operating expenses are over $500,000 a year, and the city of Salmon Arm graciously gives us $12,000 a year towards operating expenses, which is very, very helpful. The BCSPCA in general does not receive ongoing federal or provincial funding, so we really rely on donors and supporters to help us make ends meet. So if we scale down to pet overpopulation, how it's a community concern, it's not only the SPCA's concern. Unsterilized animals cause community problems on many levels. Unsterilized animals breed, producing unwanted litters, creating the pet overpopulation we have. So just a little stat for you, and I was really blown away by this number. One kitten, if left unspayed, roaming at large, can have up to 400 babies within 7 years. 400. Earlier this year, I mentioned we had a PetSmart grant, that I had $62,000 granted from PetSmart Charities. I spayed and neutered 400 cats in the community for free. So it's a need that we have in this city. In addition to just the basic overpopulation, the extra mouths, we have disease from animal waste that can spread to children and other animals very quickly. The predation of birds and other native wildlife is a huge problem. Songbirds numbers decrease every year. Public nuisance and noise issues. If you've ever heard two cats fighting, it's really scary and loud. And then general overall poor animal welfare. They die needlessly without medication, without those 5 freedoms I mentioned, the water and food. It's very basic. So again, spay-neuter programs save lives. With all these animals in our community, in our region, we would love to work with the city in a partnership to improve animal welfare. The SPCA works with communities across the BC to review animal control bylaws on an annual basis. The bylaws, as you know, are integral to fighting animal cruelty, neglect, and preventing community safety issues overall. So our team is ready to work with your policy staff to help improve community safety through bylaw review. A couple of proposed bylaw amendments. So in May 17th of this year, 2018, the BCSPCA wrote to Council proposing amendments to Pound and Animal Control Bylaw number 2398. The suggested changes reflect on our recommendations that municipalities adopt a proactive, evidence-based approach to animal welfare bylaws. Further, the amendments align with Salmon Arm's strategic goal, to improve and promote a healthy, safe community and build upon this success achieved during the community's ongoing cat spay-neuter initiatives. So again, the PetSmart grant we've already done, completed it in record time. And I'll be rolling out a low-income spay-neuter program very shortly here as well for community members. So the first bylaw amendment change is the adopt standards of care. So 68 municipalities in BC have standards of care provisions included in their bylaws. These provisions are important as they educate the public and assist with the BCSPCA in enforcing cruelty complaints. We recommend that Council consider changes that restrict the unattended tethering of animals to a fixed object, prohibit the confinement of animals without sufficient ventilation. This provision would apply to animals locked in stationary motor vehicles. Every spring and summer, and even into the fall here on a nice warm day or hot day in the summer, we get loads of phone calls from concerned citizens that are usually at Piccadilly Mall, and they see animals that are confined with a little window space open at the top in the blaring sun. And so we run down there to see if we can save the animal, because it just takes 10 minutes for an animal to die in a hot car. So the next part of that is we would require caregivers to provide animals with clean drinking water, sufficient food, the opportunity for regular exercise and veterinary care if required. The second part of that proposal, the bylaw amendment, asks Council to introduce cat-related bylaws. These changes complement efforts already in place to reduce cat overpopulation in Salmon Arm and to improve cat welfare. So this would require cat identification in the form of a collar or tag, traceable tattoo or microchip, etc. A mandatory spay and neuter of any cat over 6 months old, and the option to introduce a cat registry. So cat registration would require a fee, and licenses could be valid for either a single year or a cat's lifetime, and that's revenue generating for the city. Specific bylaw change drawn from communities with these proposed changes in place found that can be found in the handout. There's more details in that. The BCSPCA anticipates that amending Bylaw 2398 to reflect the proposed changes would not result in additional costs for the city. The enforcement of the introduced provisions would occur alongside the enforcement of other aspects of the bylaws already in place. The city could introduce fines for any violation of these provisions, so further revenue generating. Should council choose to adopt a cat registry, the city would collect fees for that service as well. So that's our bylaws. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about planning for a new home in Salmon Arm. So there's a map or a drawing of the new facility we just opened on Saturday in the Kootenays. So we're looking for a new home in Salmon Arm as well. We're in the early stages of planning for a new facility for this community to better serve our community and better care for our animals. The building we're in now was built in 1982, and it's I refer to it affectionately as a Band-Aid because there's lots of of bits and pieces. So the first step is identifying a parcel of land within the city of Salmon Arm, and I know our CEO, Craig Daniel, had the opportunity to speak with Mayor Cooper earlier this month at the UBCM convention. So we're hoping to engage the city for support in this new facility as well. I've started to look at land myself in this area, working with a realtor. So those are the first pieces in mind. So we'd love to work with you guys. Any questions?
Just thank you for your presentation. Yes, we did have a lengthy conversation, and he was very much an advocate.
Yes,
which,
yes.
I think we all are too.
Yes.
And I know the things that you're suggesting for cats, and it will be a council decision. But I know when they first started, proposing these for dogs, there was probably a lot of opposition. And so now I think it's an education piece, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we take every opportunity to educate the public that we can.
Yeah. So thank you. I'll open it up to council.
Welcome.
Council, do we have comments or questions? Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Worship. And I don't know if you know Julie Unfer, but
I do.
her email to us in council correspondence is extremely timely. I'm wondering if that was kind of planned.
No, I have no. I saw her at our walk earlier in September, our Pause in the Parade event downtown, but I haven't talked to her.
Well, it's interesting because I was going to bring up the correspondence item and will later, but
Okay.
I just had one question. If bylaw amendments are made, and as an example, the future council says we want to register cats, or we want to prevent unattended
Tethering.
Sorry. Who enforces that? Is it the current person that fulfills our dog bylaw?
Correct.
So
the initially, yes, it would be the current bylaw officer. I realize there's only one.
Right.
However, it wouldn't. It still continues to be a complaints basis system, similar to how it is now. However, there is an opportunity for an increase in fines to the homeowner or animal owner if the bylaw officer gets called to their house and there's a complaint, say it's noise complaint or something. Likely it's because they're also tethered, so there'd be an additional fine because of tethering. It wouldn't be a separate visit.
And you said somewhere in your package you have provided details on communities that do have cat-related bylaws?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Well, thank you for your presentation and for what you do. And I had heard through somebody I talked to at either the BC SPCA or in Canadian at one of the conferences I was at recently that they consider you a superstar. So you are to be
thank you.
congratulated for what you do in our community.
Thank you so much. We work hard.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Cooper, and thank you, Victoria, for the presentation. Just for background information for me, so your current location, does SPCA own that or lease that? Or?
We do own the land, yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, we sure do.
So you have some leveraging of assets to
Correct.
look for a new property.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned a couple of times the completing the PetSmart funding initiative in record time, and
We did.
congratulations on that. What are the chances for further ongoing funding through that program?
100% actually. I've got approval from PetSmart Charities to do another round of it next year.
Okay, so this
Yeah.
is the
So we're really thrilled.
so this is hot off the press for us. That's
Yes,
that's
it's a secret.
Great. A great initiative. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councillor Harrison?
Great, thank you, Worship. Thank you, Victoria,
You're
for
welcome.
coming and speaking to us. Appreciate it. So, if my math's right, you said that a kitten who's not spayed or neutered over 8 years produces 400,
7 years.
over
Correct.
7 years,
Yeah,
produces
400 kittens.
So times the 400 that you spay and neutered in your program, that's like 160,000. So even
We
if-
are superstars.
Yes, there you go. That's a lot of kittens.
It's a lot.
Wow. So of course the
Amazing.
proactive approach is the best.
Yeah.
Victoria, what happens if someone loses their cat and they come out to the SPCA to get the cat and the cat is not spayed or neutered? Do they just get the cat back, or does it have to be spayed or neutered before they get it back?
They do not have to be spayed or neutered. There is a redemption fee, and we strongly encourage them, but we can't force them to spay or neuter. And again, this is where the education piece comes in. You know, we throw all kinds of scary numbers at them, like, you know, breeding and even the health issues that come along with that. But we can't force them to, no.
Okay. And so if the bylaw is amended, that would enable the SPCA then to say you must spay or neuter your cat?
Correct. If the cat's under 6 months of age, the bylaw would not cover that, but if they're 6 months of age or older. And again, it's if you do the math, by the time 6 months comes along, they can already have a number of kittens.
Right.
So we're, you know, at 6 months, the bylaw would kick in.
Okay.
So,
So these are good things to consider.
yeah,
All right, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Councillor Flynn, you had something further?
Yeah, I just had one more comment that the work on the 400 last year was amazing and great work. I just think it's important for the youth in the room and then for the gallery to know that you guys can't do that without having among the most cooperative vet clinics in town
That's so true.
that help make that happen
That's
at a
right.
discounted rate
Yep.
to benefit the community. And I know we have more than one vet clinic, but I think they all work with you to make it a
Correct.
positive
Yeah,
experience.
the three that are in Salmon Arm, we work very closely with two of them, and we couldn't do it without them, obviously.
I think that's important to note, but thank you for all you do
Yeah,
and
you're
your volunteers.
Thank you.
So thank you for your presentation. You've given us some things to think about, and
Great.
we really appreciate what you do. And as we heard, you're a superstar.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for
Thank you.
caring.
Have a good afternoon.
Administrator?
Your worship, under confirmation of minutes, item 6.1 is the regular council minutes of August 27. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Harrison, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that the regular council meeting minutes of August 27, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
Do we have any comments or questions on these minutes? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And item 6.2 is the special council minutes of September 7th, 2018. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that the special council meeting minutes of September 7, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
Questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And under committee reports, your worship, item 7.1 is the Development and Planning Services Committee minutes of September 17. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Harrison, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the Development and Planning Services Committee meeting minutes of September 17, 2018 be received as information.
Again, do we have any comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And item 7.2 is the Agriculture Advisory Committee minutes of August 15. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councillor Harrison, that the Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting minutes of August 15, 2018 be received as information.
Do we have any comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And item 7.3, Your Worship, is the Community Heritage Commission minutes of April 20. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Wallace Richmond, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the Community Heritage Commission meeting minutes of April 20, 2018 be received as information.
Do we have any questions, any comments? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And item 7.4, Your Worship, is the Housing Task Force minutes of August 13. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that the Housing Task Force meeting minutes of August 13, 2018 be received as information.
Do we have any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
And item 7.5 is the Environmental Advisory minutes of September 6th. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Harrison, that the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting minutes of September 6, 2018 be received as information.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Lavery? Oh, try again. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. Just if we could go to item 6A under new business, I think it's on page 41 of our document. And just as an example of, and especially with the Youth Council here as well, and we'll probably in the next few sessions be doing all sorts of sidebars. So here's the issue, but here's some background to the issue for y'all to get up to speed. Is an example of just, so the Environmental Advisory Committee has 15 members on board, a cross-section of environmental and business and development groups. And it's an example, 6A is called Drones in the Bay. So it's come to our awareness, it was brought up, that drones are being flown over the nesting areas. And in the nesting areas in the bay, we put up floats and things like that so people don't go in there, but now there are drones flying over top. So the introduction of the topic has started already. What we have learned very quickly is it's a multi-jurisdictional issue involving the airport and how far from the airport can you fly drones and how high can you fly drones and whose responsibility is it for monitoring. And for instance, on the Foreshore Trail, it's the Land Trust that really has got a position on that. On the far side of the West Bay, there's First Nation communities and jurisdictional issues as well. So for Council's information, we've just started this discussion. There'll be much more discussion over time. And for the Youth Council, I think it's one of these interesting ones where new technology and how does it impact on city bylaws and environmental aspects. Drones have been banned in national parks and provincial parks, and we have a very interesting quandary in front of us here now, and we'll be talking about that more in the Environmental Advisory Committee. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and just input, and I'm sure that your committee has thought of outside the jurisdictional opportunity for the drones, some type of signage that would be an educational piece of signage might be a possibility if the other doesn't work.
Go ahead. Councillor Lavery?
Yes, without it. The issue of signage and has come up. Who does the signage? Where is it placed? That sort of stuff, I think, will be the next topics that are coming available. But this was just introduced 2 weeks ago, and it'll start working its way through the system. And I just extend an invitation to students, if you're interested in environmental issues and stuff like that, the Environmental Advisory Committee is a public meeting and it's open, and you're welcome to attend. And we'll get back on the signage as well.
So thank you very much. Write this down. Drones. Follow it along. Find out how long it actually takes. And I will call the question on this. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your worship, under introduction of bylaws, item 8.1 is permissive tax exemption bylaw 4279, and as mentioned earlier, that's been removed from the agenda.
Yes.
So item 8.2 is zoning amendment bylaw 4282 for the property at 1511 10th Avenue Southwest. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Harrison, that the bylaw entitled City of Salmon Arm Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4282 be read a first and second time, and that final reading be withheld subject to approval by the Ministry of Transportation.
Do you just want to speak to this just a bit for the youth council here? This is new to them.
Your worship, the property under application is located west of Piccadilly Mall, as shown on the Appendix 1 of the agenda. Here's Piccadilly Mall, and the property is located to the west on 10th Avenue Southwest. It's 1 acre in size, and it's presently designated for highway commercial land use in the official community plan, as shown here. This pink area is designated for commercial zoning, and the proposed zoning is C3, which is service commercial. Right now the property is zoned R1, single family residential, which reflects the historical use of a single family dwelling on this property. And the properties to the west and to the east are zoned C3. To the north is First Nations land, IR7, Indian Reserve 7, and at one time the property was acquired by Walmart for a future secondary access to this triangular shaped lot. Salmon Arm Shopping Centers owns the property and they would like to sell it, and the applicant is trying to rezone it to C3.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from council? Councillor Harrison?
Your worship, perhaps not a question, but an educational opportunity for our new folks. Because we need to remember that Gray is the only one who knows all this stuff now. So the two documents that the planner's been talking about are ones that you're going to hear about a lot. And the first one, we call it the OCP, it's the Official Community Plan. Could staff just pull up the Official Community Plan page for this particular lot? So the Official Community Plan is a document that was formed with a lot of community input. And it's a document that shows what land use is suggested in the future for all of the land within the city. So in this particular piece, which is along 10th Avenue, just up from Piccadilly Mall, the Official Community Plan, as the planner said, the purple piece shows highway service tourist commercial. So when someone goes to buy a property like this one, the first thing they do, they think, oh, I want to put a store there maybe. They come to City Hall and they look at the Official Community Plan. And if the Official Community Plan suggests that, they know they've got a fairly good chance to get it zoned to what they would like. So the Official Community Plan is the one document. The second document is zoning document, zoning bylaw. If we could just go there. So as you can see, most of the properties along 10th, at least along the north side, already conform to the Official Community Plan because they are pink as well. But there's two gaps there, and the one that we're looking at says R1, which is a residential zone. So right now the owner cannot build a store there. He can only put a house. So he has come to us and said, the Official Community Plan suggests commercial use there. I would like to rezone it. And so for council, we look at that favorably. We have to have a hearing where the public get to come and talk to us about it. And unless they have some really good reasons where why they don't think it should be a commercial use, for the most part, we rezone to conform to the Official Community Plan. So that's how that process works. I haven't taught for about 6 months, so I had to get that in there.
Okay. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you. And it's interesting, Councillor Harrison took this opportunity because on the weekend, I had major discussions with people about the Official Community Plan who were questioning land use across the tracks because of the upcoming underpass question. And I think the important thing to note is that official community plans are started and created by planners who do this for a living. They are then presented where we are and where perhaps we need to go in numerous public meetings. And the opportunity for the community to be involved in the OCP happens about every 5 to 10 years. And in a perfect world, it would be every 5 years or 6 years, because it's important to update it. But in the reality of most communities, because of the cost and the time commitment, it's usually closer to 6 to 8 years, I believe. But unfortunately, quite often people don't understand that the OCP is designed by the community, with input obviously from staff and professionals and consultants. But at the end of the day, there's numerous public input sessions to develop the OCP, and it's a reflection of what the community wants for land use. So that's all I would add.
Okay, do we have anything further? Hearing none, then I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your worship, item 8.3 is zoning amendment bylaw 4283 for the property at 110 2nd Street Southeast. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Wallace-Richmond, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the bylaw entitled zoning amendment bylaw number 4283 be read a first and second time, and that final reading be withheld subject to the following: confirmation that the proposed suite meets zoning bylaw and BC Building Code requirements, and approval by the Ministry of Transportation.
Thank you. Development Services?
Your worship, this is another rezoning application. This property is residential as well, but it's located in the downtown core area, southwest of City Hall, on 2nd Street Southeast. And the applicant is applying to rezone the property to R8, which is a residential suite zone, in order to use the building in the backyard of the property as a detached suite, or as like a miniature house, no larger than 900 square feet, although this building is about 600 plus square feet. So as it stands now, with the present zoning of the property, people can't live in this building in the backyard. If the property is rezoned to R8, then people can occupy this building and live in it as a detached suite. So that's what the purpose of this zoning application is.
Okay, thank you. There, as we understand it, there'll be a number of steps for this one as well. This is just the first step.
Council is reviewing first and second reading of the bylaw, and then if council approves first and second reading, then there'll be a public hearing scheduled at the next council meeting. And after the public hearing, council will consider third reading of the bylaw. And if council grants third reading of the bylaw, then the owner has to show our building department that the building can meet building code, provincial building code for a suite. And a provincial ministry has to grant approval of the bylaw before council can grant final reading.
Okay, thank you. So another very interesting one that you can follow along, because you're going to see there's a number of steps, and then there's some other things that this owner is going to need to do and want to do. So thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any questions on this? Councillor Harrison?
Just a comment, Your Worship. I think it's an ideal spot for a secondary suite, mostly because there's a laneway that runs right behind that we can see on this drawing. And so that yellow square would be the parking spot for the person who lives in the suite, so there should be no difficulty with parking. And of course, we're wanting to densify the downtown. So instead of having just one person living on that lot, this would provide a second dwelling unit. So I'll support first and second reading.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will support. Kind of brings up Councillor Harrison's discussion earlier. If you look at the zoning, it actually supports a higher density than what we're approving. But we are increasing densities, and to get to the higher densities that are proposed by the OCP, we would need somebody to be buying probably a number of properties and bringing forward a condo or something like that. So this increases densities. It's a good location with the lane there, and it provides another housing opportunity close to town.
Thank you. Do we have anything further? I have to tell you, my first apartment that I ever rented was in the house next door to this. So I went down there to see. It was kind of like going down memory lane. But also what I liked about that is that I walked to town all the time. I walked to work, walked back. It was very walkable and close to all the amenities. I could just walk to the grocery store as well. I didn't have a car, and I didn't actually even have a driver's license. So this was a perfect spot for that. So we're looking at those kind of things, walkability, close to amenities, things like that when we're doing multifamily dwellings or suites and things like that. So if there's anything further, hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your worship, item 8.4 is Cemetery Management Bylaw 4280. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Harrison, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the bylaw entitled Cemetery Management Bylaw number 4280 be read a first, second, and third time.
Development Services? Oh, sorry. Corporate Services? There you are. Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. The bylaw before you for consideration today is the first step in opening up the new Shuswap Memorial Cemetery. And this bylaw, which will take the place of the previous bylaw, will cover all bylaws within the City of Salmon. It is updated as per the current legislation, and it introduces new cemetery services such as ossuaries, a scattering garden, and green burials. Green burials are not contemplated at this time. However, there has been some interest, and we anticipate that maybe in the not too distant future, staff will receive education and will work with the funeral parlors in town to start offering that.
Do we have any questions or comments? Councillor Flynn?
Yeah, this is good news. I will vote in support. This has been coming on stream for a long time. The site is amazing. It's going to be a great addition, but for our new students here, this is Councillor Eliason in his absence. I'm going to bring up, this is a trivia question that I know you guys are going to get asked. What is the one thing that municipal government is responsible for technically by the Act? Great?
It's the cemetery.
Yeah. It's the only thing that legislation says we have to provide. So it's taken a long time to get this on up to this stage. I thank staff for putting this together, and if you haven't walked up there and seen the new trails and the new cemetery, it's actually very pleasant.
Thank you. Do we have an opening date?
Thank you, Your Worship. We don't have an opening date yet because the business plan that is required for licensing has just been completed, and we'll be submitting our application this week, hopefully.
Okay.
And I don't have a date when Consumer Protection will have that back by, but hopefully before the end of this year.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any further comments or questions? Hearing none, and I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your worship, under reconsideration of bylaws, item 9.1 is Road Closure Bylaw 4266. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Lavery, seconded by Councillor Wallace-Richmond, that the bylaw entitled Road Closure Bylaw number 4266 be read a final time.
Development Services, would you just like to give us a little update on this?
Your Worship, this is a bylaw proposing to close a undeveloped road just directly south of the Ridge subdivision. And this plan here shows the southern part of the Ridge subdivision with 24th Avenue leading up to 10th Street Southwest, and then connecting to 25th Avenue Southwest, where it ends in a cul-de-sac. And these three property owners would like to buy the road off the city. And so they made an offer at fair market value to the city, and council agreed to that price. And this bylaw requires 4 readings. It's had 3 readings, and being a community charter related bylaw, there's no public hearing. However, at this point, Your Worship, you may want to ask the public if there's any input on this.
So those that are in the gallery, do you have any input on this? Any thoughts or issues? Here, seeing none.
So, Your Worship, the road was dedicated in 1968, 50 years ago. As mentioned, it hasn't been used as a road. There's reasons why it wasn't used as a road, even with the current subdivision that was developed within the last 10 years. There was a decision made that this road would not connect through or down to Foothill. So if the road is closed, it will turn into a property and it will be amalgamated with this property here, and this property here, and these three property owners will pay the city, it's written here, it's about $64,000 for that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further comments, any questions? Councillor Harrison?
Just a brief comment, Your Worship, and thank you to the Director of Development Services for working through this. I think from the city's point of view, it's a piece of property that we don't need. It's not a trail connecting piece, and our revenues would be $64,000. So I will certainly support final reading.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anything further? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your Worship, item 9.2 is Council Procedure Bylaw number 4276. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the bylaw entitled Council Procedure Bylaw number 4276 be read a final time.
Corporate Services and Election Officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Council Procedure Bylaw before you for final reading has a number of updates which have been advertised in the newspaper as per legislation, which include updating of all references of district to city, updating the addition of Robert's Rules of Order to also include subsequent releases, inclusion of the Columbia Shuswap Regional District update to the Order of Proceedings and Business section of the agenda, removal of all reference to Committee of the Whole, update of Local Government Act sections, addition of electronic meetings, addition of notice of motion on the agenda, renumbering of sections and reformatting where applicable, and changing the inaugural meeting to the first Monday in November following a general local election. And it is the final point that actually triggered this update. And so it was timely just to get in all of these other changes.
Okay. So thank you. And do we have anything, any questions or comments from council? Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. If council were wanting to make an amendment at this stage, would we have to go back to first and second reading again?
Administrator?
Yes, we would.
Okay. I'm not going to suggest then that we make a change presently, but I kind of missed it, I think, when we looked at all the changes, because I certainly agree with the ones we made. But on page 11, 18.1, talks about delegations and the length of time that delegations have to present. And 18.1 limits that address to five minutes unless there's a unanimous vote of the members present. And what we found over here, over many years here, is 5 minutes is just not realistic. And so I would have amended it to 10 minutes. I won't now, but I would like just to note it, so that should we come back and look at this bylaw, that we think about doing that. My colleagues may or may not agree, I don't know. We can extend the time with a unanimous vote of members present, so that's a way around it. But today's presentation by Victoria, which was a great presentation, it was 9 minutes. So just a note for in the future, and I'm sorry I missed it the first time.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, and I didn't notice that either. I think I would support that being 10, but strictly adhering to it. But I think we can just handle that at the time for now. My question was related to committees of the whole, and I've been here 13 years, and we've never really, since we've gone to the development and planning, had a committee of the whole. But I know, talking to people at UBCM and FCM, that they all have committee of the whole meetings, even though it doesn't seem like they have a real legal bearing reading this, the information. Are we safe eliminating the opportunity to have committee of the whole? Is there any time we would need a committee of the whole, or would we deal with that at the time, even though this says we won't acknowledge committee of the whole? So I just wanted to clarify that.
Corporate officer?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's no danger in eliminating it, and if council decided that they wanted to step into committee of the whole from a regular council meeting, I think you would be okay to do that. Some municipalities operate a committee of the whole as a full committee structure, and when I did an analysis of the Development and Planning Services Committee meeting, it doesn't really fit the committee of the whole structure, and so that was the reason for eliminating it from the bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, this bylaw allows us to attend a meeting remotely.
Yes, it does, up to 2 council members. However, we do not currently have that ability in council chambers due to our electronic system. We have to upgrade our phone system.
Okay. Well, I think that's appropriate to have that, although having been involved in many committees or boards that is allowed, I would suggest even if it's allowed, we discourage it, because it's very, it just never seems to work smoothly because of technology. We can put people on the moon, but we can't get remote meeting attendance. So anyhow, I'm glad it's there, and I hope we can make it happen, but I would still not encourage it.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Cooper. And actually, I was going to speak to 2 matters. One was the electronic meetings as well, and for the Youth Council, it's probably what's wrong with that. That makes real sense, and it does. But it does a lot of the conversation at times, and I can just speak from my own experience, I'm picking up ideas from other people at the table and things like that. And sometimes it's the words that are spoken, sometimes it's the nature of the interaction that really add to the discussion and my understanding of it. So I was going to bring up, as Councillor Flynn did, we have it. It's good to have it in place, upcoming. But it's not all that it's made out to be. And sometimes it's can be actually counterproductive to the flow of the conversation, but we'll see what happens. The second one, I support this and I'm going to vote for it. The second bullet there was updating the edition of Robert's Rule of Orders, and we'll do that. I had made a suggestion to the corporate officer that with a new council coming on board, perhaps new membership at the CSRD, definitely a new school board coming up, it might be an opportunity to do an update workshop session partnering on Robert's Rule of Orders with those jurisdictions as well, but that's something for the new council to decide. But at this stage right now, I'm just going to put that little marker down here. I think it's a good opportunity. We talk about working with the school district, and perhaps it's an opportunity to learn together. So I will support the motion.
Yes, thank you. Do we have anything further on this? So we just want to make note that Councillor Harrison is interested in the one item. So at some further date, making the presentations 10 minutes. So we just want to make note of that. Okay. Do we have anything further? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your Worship, item 9.3 is fee for service amendment by law number 4278 regarding cannabis retail processing fee. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Harrison, that the bylaw entitled Fee for Service Amendment Bylaw number 4278 be read a final time.
Did somebody want to just give us an update on this? Financial service, just because the students are here and a lot of people may not know what this is all about.
Sure, Your Worship. So this is a fee related to processing an application for a cannabis retail store in Salmon Arm. And Council approved a policy back in August on how the city will handle such applications from the province of BC. And in order for city staff to process an application, and we've received 3 referrals now from the province, by the way. The applicant has to pay $1,000 to the city, and almost half of that, $1,000, is for advertisement and mailing costs. That's how much it costs the city to advertise in the newspaper and to send out mail. So it was interesting to look at what's involved with an application and who's involved, and there's actually quite a few staff members involved in this process. And $1,000 is a fair tally of what it does cost. And some municipalities are charging a lot more than that, and I'm not really sure how they arrived at their numbers.
Okay, thank you very much. So do we have any comments or any questions? Councillor Harrison?
Just comment, Your Worship. I think it's important that we're applying this processing fee not to make a profit from applications for cannabis retail. We're setting the fee to recover the costs that it costs the city in order to process applications. I believe, and perhaps the Director of Development Services can confirm this, I believe to apply to the province, which of course is part of the process, I believe it's $7,500. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So they obviously have set their fee based on what they think it's going to cost them to process. So our fee is $1,000, there's a $7,500, so you're into it for $8,500 before you have any guarantee that you're going to be able to have a store. So I think that's important to note, but I certainly will vote in favor because I don't think that the general taxpayer should be offsetting the cost to apply for a cannabis retail outlet.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, and part of the bylaw, this was a fairly significant discussion point. And as has been mentioned, ours is probably lower than most of the communities, but staff was looking at it as a cost recovery. I guess my one question, and it may not be for the Director of Development Services, it might be the Chief Administrative Officer, the Chief Financial Officer, or Director of Corporate Services, I'm not sure who will answer it, but with our business license fees, in the past we have tied contribution to economic development and to tourism services somewhat to money collected for business license fees. If our cost is $1,000, is there anything left over? Or we don't know exactly what our cost is, but will there be some money from these license applications to go towards business promotion like some of the other business license fees are set up for?
Administrator?
Your Worship, that may be possible, but I guess remains to be seen.
Depends on what it's going to cost us.
Yep.
So, okay. Thank you. I'm comfortable with the number, even though it was a fairly significantly discussed issue.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. In light of that question, if I could ask through you, what will the fee be after year 1?
Do we have any idea, Director of Development Services?
Your Worship, there's no plans to raise the fee right now. We could look to see if it costs any more than this, but I doubt it will.
Okay, so would it be $1,000 a year for a business license to own a cannabis? Or would it be $1,000 to apply and then you pay regular business license fee?
Oh, okay. That's another way to look at it.
Okay.
And it's a good question because on top of this fee, if council approves the location and then if the province ultimately allows the store to go where it does, then the store operator has to get a business license application for a retail store.
Right, okay.
Which is based on the square footage.
Okay.
And they usually range around $300 a year.
Perfect. Thank you for the answer to my question.
Thank you. Is there anything further? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your Worship, that brings us to item 10, correspondence.
So did anyone wish to speak to any of the correspondence? We have quite a few letters here. Councillor Wallace Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. Item 6. The use of the gazebo at Canoe Beach for a celebration of life. Is it my understanding that that's basically a first come, first serve arrangement, maybe through you to staff?
Development Services or corporate officer? Not sure.
Your Worship.
Engineering, okay.
Excuse me. This event is planned for November 5th, so I'm not sure that not too many people will be on the beach in November. But yeah, typically the use during the summer months is definitely first come, first serve. This is a bit of a special request in the sense that it's a celebration of life, so we thought it should go to council.
Okay. I'm certainly happy to support. Is it a motion that staff is looking for?
They need a motion. So motion by Councillor Wallace Richmond. We need a seconder. Councillor Harrison. So did anyone else wish to speak to the motion? It is to support this application. Hearing none, then I'll call, oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Alan Harrison, did you wish to speak?
No,
Okay.
that's not about this.
Councillor Flynn?
So when I read the request, the second page says Canoe Beach, 2 round picnic tables, 4 garbage cans, 4 TV table, recycle bins, electric heaters, porta potties if the bathrooms are unavailable, tarps. Is that, what I'm confused with, are they asking us to provide all that?
Your Worship, no, that's something, he's just making a list of items that they're going to be using at the beach.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, well, I'm very much in support. I just wasn't sure what role we were playing besides allowing it to happen.
That was a good question. Do you have anything further on this? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So, do we have any, Councillor Wallace Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. And my the next letter would be item 12. This is another plea from the Shuswap District Arts Council, or the Arts Center, to make sure that we seriously consider addressing the gutter and water and drainage issues in the gazebo. I don't know if we have an update from the Rotarians who are assisting to help us, but I'd like to make sure this gets put in the budget referrals for the 2019 budget.
Okay. Do you need a motion? Director of Engineering?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to provide council with a slight update on the gutter system. That was approved in this year's budget and it is being installed.
Wonderful.
Okay, there we go.
That's great news. Thank you very much.
We will have to let her know.
I wonder why, yeah. Maybe we got our projects mixed up there. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Did you have anything further, Councillor Wallace Richmond?
No, thanks.
Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll speak to the building department stats first, item number 1 and then item number 2 after that. So these are the building department reports for the end of August. And as we know, last year, 2017, was really a record year in a lot of respects in the city for total building value. And this year at the end of August, we're ahead of that rate with total permits issued at $40 million, just over $40 million. Once again, single-family dwellings are leading the way, but that's not the only kind of housing that's happening in Salmon Arm, and I think it's important for everyone to know that. Item number 5, multifamily development. So the way you read that column is, last year there was 1 building at this time with 4 units. This year there's 8 buildings with 27 units provided. And we know that there's other buildings that are being considered in the city for multifamily, both for rental and for ownership. So 253 applications have been handled by our building department. I know that they're working hard, and we're expecting the commercial number 7, new commercial, the Marriott Hotel. We're expecting that building permit sometime, probably in the next few months, and that's about a $10 million building permit. So I think it's really looking positive. We can look at the next item 2, and the way you read this one is it shows the years 2001 to 2018. So if you look down the August column, which starts 2001, there was $17 million in building permits through August. And of course, this year, 2018, there's $40 million. It's the fourth highest, I believe, at this time, 214. And then there was a couple of big projects in 2007 and 2008. And of course, if interest is the economic slowdown in 2008, you can see what happened. 2009, we had $11 million in building permits, and we slowly clawed our way back and are back at 40 million. So I think it's interesting information to get out, and perhaps of interest to our youth as well.
I believe the hotel has taken out its building permit, is that correct?
Yes, it has.
It was like a 10.1 million or something?
Yeah, 10.1 million.
So that will be on the September roll.
Yes, it will.
Okay. I can leave that item unless someone else wants to speak to it.
Anyone else want to speak to it? I will. Okay. Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Your worship, Councillor Harrison raised a good point. So when does the building permit get taken? So you can be zoned, have plans, be approved, but until you put a shovel in the ground, you don't need that building permit. Is that right?
Your worship, there's a process, and it starts with the application, the paperwork, and the plans sent into the city. And then there's a plan review by the building inspectors to see if everything meets code and who's involved with the project. Usually a bunch of engineers and project managers are involved, such as the hotel. And then they get a list of all the requirements that they need to fulfill before the building permit's issued, including the payment of development cost charges and building permit fees. And when we receive those monies, then we issue the permit.
I see. Okay, great to know. Thank you very much.
Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to Councillor Harrison for bringing this up. I think it's this page that's up now. If you look at December, I think it's kind of key to note that last year was the second highest year for building permits in the last 17. And if you add 10 million to September, because we know that's coming, we're at almost a record pace for development. So I think staff needs to be congratulated. Clearly, planning decisions are very positive, and clearly we are seeing significant development at almost record highs. So, yeah, we're open for business.
We are. Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Number 15. And this letter is to Mayor and Council from Sabnus, who are asking for our support with the invasive plant woody nightshade cleanup on the waterfront. And I just wonder if there's been contact with staff at all yet, before I talk any more about the letter.
No, Your Worship, we have had no contact other than the letter itself.
Okay. All right. I would like to help, or I would like the city to help out some with Sabnus and trying to help curb and, of course, eliminate would be the best of this invasive species on our waterfront. Because if we don't do something, it's going to overgrow and take over. And there's been a lot of work put into it. What they're asking for is $1,000 for per day for 5 days. I would propose that we provide at least one of those days, and I would make a motion that we forward $1,000 from council initiatives to Sabnus to help with the woody nightshade removal.
So you made the motion. Councillor Lavery seconded. Speaking to the motion, does anyone wish to speak to it? Councillor Lavery?
Yes, I'll support it as presented. I just note that at our Environmental Advisory Committee, the issue was brought up as well to request council support for that. So I was going to speak to that as well. So
you can pass on the information.
Yeah.
So do you know how much we have in council initiatives?
Your Worship, you have 15,900 remaining.
Ooh, we did pretty good this year. Didn't give out very much. So $1,000 is definitely there. Okay. So, Councillor Flynn?
I was going to ask how much is in there, and do the mover and seconder feel 1,000 is enough, or should we fund 2 days if it's such an important asset? Knowing what our balance is and we're reaching year end.
Did you wish?
That.
Yeah.
Appreciate the suggestion. The reason I brought it up is I know that Councillor Jameson is away, and he is our Sabnus rep. And so, in collaboration with him, I know he wanted to support. I would be amenable to increasing to 2,000 if the seconder would support it.
So friendly amendment to 2,000, okay? Okay. Councillor Flynn?
Yeah, I will vote in support. I know if we don't use council initiatives, it gets carried forward, but knowing how many people use this asset and how important it is to clean up this wood nightshade, I think it's something we're supporting. So if we can support 2 days and work with Sabnus to try to get them to the 5 days, that would be great.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery?
I'll support this, Your Worship, and then come back to just a question to staff. There's also a request for perhaps a dumpster or a truck for it as well, but I'll do this one and then come back to that.
Finish this first. Anything further on this one? Hearing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Sorry, I'll have to push your button again then. Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Cooper. Through you to staff, do we have the option of providing a receptacle for them? It seems to me that's what they're asking, and is that would that need to be an extra budget item or something we can do within our current capacity?
Your Worship, we do not have any dumpsters. Those are all rented. So I would suggest if they're looking for a dumpster that they can contact one of the garbage disposal companies and see if they can get a donation. And as far as a truck goes, that would have to be budgeted. That would have to be more money added to the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything further on that one? Okay. Do we have anything further that we wish to speak to? Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Worship. Item, I think it's 13, but downtown Salmon Arm request for help with community cleanup. Yeah, it's 13. I had a question with the change in election date, and in the past, the current council has dealt with next year's budget. This is a request for money to be in the budget, and as Councillor Wallace-Richmond said to me, it seems like an extremely inefficient way to deal with a $500 request that's been put in the budget in the past. Can council deal with this letter and say that they would support this for 4 years, or is this going to be left to future council, or is this going to be built into the budget?
Engineering?
Your Worship, typically this request goes on in a specific referral, so it's discussed at budget.
Yeah, is there a more efficient or effective way to do it?
Is that something we should be discussing at budget then? Engineering?
I would recommend it be discussed at budget time. If council wishes to add that money for each year, then they can do it at that time.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question though. Anything further? Councillor Lavery?
Thank you, Mayor Cooper. Just a couple of notes on correspondence and actually for the students. So there's a lot of reading when you're at this table. Our agenda day was 302 pages and correspondence. So we haven't met for 4 weeks, but 80 pages. It just gives you a sense of the volume of information that comes in front of us and the breadth of the information as well. If we could turn to item number 19, please. And I would just, it's an invitation to council about Shuswap Food Co-op series. I've attended a number of them over the years. They're getting better and better. The group is getting wider and wider, and it's incredibly informative. The 2 or 3 times that I've gone, I have learned a fair amount, so I would just give a shout out to that. And if either council or anybody in the gallery is interested, I'd check it out. There are also 1 or 2 others here, and I was waiting. I think they're more, we just have to process them. So item number 11, and it's a request from the Legion. And I would check through your worship with staff if we need a motion to approve this.
Your Worship, this is just for information. This can be done through a road closure.
Great. Thank you very much. And then the last one, and is number 14 about the solstice bonfire night from downtown Salmon Arm as well. And is a motion required?
I think Councillor Flynn would. Is there a motion required for this?
For the Legion?
No.
Sorry.
Downtown Salmon Arm,
Bonfire.
item 14.
Yes, there is.
Councillor Flynn, did you want to make a motion?
Well, Councillor Lavery can, I'll second it, sure.
Okay. So, motion by Councillor Lavery, second by Councillor Flynn. And Councillor Flynn, did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I wasn't at the last Downtown Salmon Arm Board meeting, and they don't have meetings in July and August because the retailers are so busy. But the fact is I very much support this road closure for December 20th, for the winter solstice bonfire night. And they close, I believe, it doesn't make it clear they want to close Alexander, because it says close vehicle traffic between Hudson and Lakeshore. I'm assuming they mean for Alexander, from 4 to 8. And they're trying to promote downtown activities, late night shopping, and just a bunch of Christmas fun. So I do support it and ask council to vote in favor.
Okay. Do we have anything further from council on this? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Do we have any other correspondence we want to speak to? Councillor Lavery?
Thank you, Worship. I was waiting till we went through a lot of this to talk about item number 5. I know which you indicated that you were in conflict on.
Yes.
I'd actually like to talk about it, and perhaps Councillor Harrison could take the chair, or somebody could take the chair anyhow.
Yeah, because Ken is away. So.
Our acting mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Go ahead.
If we could have item number 5 on the screen, which is the update on fundraising. And I think that there was I saw it in our emails, an associated letter that may have not made it onto the agenda, but through you to staff, is it our understanding that this initiative is $1,000 short? Do we have any confirmation of that?
Through your worship, my understanding is that it's $500 short at this current moment.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a worthwhile venture. It's been contributed to by a number of people, and I'd like to make a motion that we take $500 out of council initiatives towards it.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Wallace-Richmond. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Lavery?
No, it's a great initiative. It's for one of our public parks, and I think it's a great contribution, so I think we should do it.
I see there's no other speakers. I believe when Ms. Algazar brought this forward, we said come back to us once you've raised some money and done a lot of the work, and she has done a lot of the work, and Mayor Cooper's been involved as well. So I will support the motion. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Councillor Lavery, did you have something further?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Harrison?
Just one more, Your Worship, that I want to speak to, number 29. As Roots and Blues Festival is part of my portfolio, and we received this really complimentary letter from Mayor Ken Christian from the city of Kamloops. And I did forward it to David Ganella for him to share with the board. But I think this is typical of the feedback that was received this year regarding the event, the high caliber of talent that was assembled, and especially the friendly and knowledgeable volunteers. There was 800 volunteers this year at the Roots and Blues Festival. So this is a reflection of the work they did. And being tremendous ambassadors for Salmon Arm, you cannot get better advertising than 800 volunteers. So thank you to them and to Mayor Christian for his letter.
It was a pleasure. I did offer the mayor of Kelowna to get tickets for him as well, but he was too busy at that time. But certainly the mayor of Kamloops was excited to receive the tickets, and he thoroughly enjoyed himself. So it's nice to see. Councillor Flynn?
Just related to that, the mayor of Kamloops at UBCM specifically came up to me to say how great a time he had. The mayor of Revelstoke is on his second year in a row, and this year brought 4 other couples and camped. And he has said even in retirement, he is going to come back and enjoy. So, I mean, I don't think you can minimize the value of that event to our community. And I think we're just getting better and better known. So
thank you. Do we have anything further on correspondence? Hearing none, I think we're ready to move on. Administrator?
Your worship, under staff reports, item 11.1 is ALC application 377 for the property at 4480 30th Street Northeast. And we would be looking for a motion to authorize this for submission to the Agricultural Land Commission.
Councillor Flynn, do you have a seconder? Councillor Harrison? Okay. Development Services, did you want to speak to this?
Your worship, this is a application from Mountain View Baptist Church, who own the property at 4480 30th Street Northeast in North Broadview. And the application is being made to the Agricultural Land Commission in Burnaby. However, the application first has to go through City Council, and if Council approves the application to go forward, then it will go down to Burnaby for the Commission's review and a decision. If Council says no to the application, then the process stops here. But the proposal is to use the southwestern portion of the property outlined in red for a future church. And a church is not a permitted use in the Agricultural Land Reserve. The property's been used for over 100 years for a school. But recently, within the last 10 years, the use of a school stopped. And when a use stops on a piece of land for a period of time, if it's been going on for a long time, before 1972 when the ALR came into effect, if the use stops, it cannot start again. And that's the situation with this property and the use. I'd like to point out too in the report, just so everybody's clear, that if the Agricultural Land Commission approves this use, and if the owners apply for a building permit, they will be subject to frontage improvements along 30th Street Northeast, and that's mentioned in the staff report. And there's also development cost charges. Actually, DCCs are not applicable to a church. They're one of the only items in the Local Government Act where they're exempt from paying. So a church would not have to pay DCCs, but they would be subject to frontage improvements along here. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that. And staff support the application for a number of reasons outlined in the report. And council has to make the decision whether it goes to the ALC or not.
Okay. Thank you for your report and explanation. Do we have council comments or questions? Councillor Flynn?
just a question. I don't know if it came up at our previous meeting about frontage improvements, but are the applicants aware that there'll likely be frontage improvements if they build a new church?
Your worship, it's mentioned in the staff report, and the applicant and the owners were provided a copy of the report.
Okay, thank you. I will vote in support of this due to the historical use. I am not sure with a previous motion we made to send to the ALC, we insisted on a site visit. Do we feel we should ask, or not insisted, but recommended a site visit? Do we feel we should be asking the ALC to do a site visit, or is that something we should add to the motion? Don't think so. Just throwing that out. But I will vote in support and trust that the ALC will see the historical use and the potential future use and the fact that these applicants want to put or use the back piece for agriculture, I think this merits approval and at least merits us forwarding it to the ALC.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Cooper. I will support the application as well. For me, it's more a sidebar for the students. So this is another twist on somebody coming forward and developing a property. Any properties that are designated as agricultural, we can have an opinion on it as an application is forwarded, but the decision about the use of it rests with the Agricultural Land Commission, the ALC. So what we are doing here right now is supporting this particular application. Other applications on agricultural land come in for putting a house on there, or putting a bigger house, or putting another house, or putting a house somewhere on a different part of the property. And it all gets down to the quality of the agricultural land, the location of it, the preservation of it, and no matter what we think here, and we probably do have some opinions, but it's the Agricultural Land Commission that makes the final determination. So that's where we are in this process here, and if and when it passes here, that application goes in, and then we'll hear about it in a few months.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just a sidebar question for staff. If residential development happens on church property, are they exempt from DCCs?
We give you all the hard questions.
Residential? Sorry. If it's...
So if there's a church property and they wanted to build housing on it, would they have to pay DCCs? You can say I don't know right now.
I don't know right now.
Okay, it's an interesting question that I'd like to know the answer at some time. If we could just look at Appendix 4. Which is the OCP piece. There. So, because I've been teaching about the OCP, everything I taught you before does not apply to this. And that's one of the things that councillors are challenged with up here. This is our official community plan for this property. You can see it's all green and it says acreage reserve, which means that you're not supposed to be able to build anything on any of it. But this is quite an unusual case because there's been a school on a piece of that property since 1918, 100 years. If we can just go to the plan that the Baptist Church brought to us, that one. So the existing building was the old school site. And what the suggestion is, they're going to do that again. I just want to confirm, Your Worship, through you to staff, that we would be able to put a covenant on this property ensuring that there's no building on the northern rectangular piece if the ALC decides that they can go ahead with their application.
Development Services?
Your Worship, if the ALC approves this application, they might require a covenant to be registered on the property, saying that the northern portion cannot be used for any development. The ALC often requires covenants. If they don't require a covenant, and if they approve it, the applicant still has to apply to rezone and redesignate the property for institutional use, for a church. Because right now it's not zoned for that either. So there's quite a few steps to go. And at that point, council can ask for a covenant if they feel one's needed.
Okay, that's helpful. And we did ask the applicant when he was here about the placing of a covenant upon the property should it proceed, and he was open to it. And so certainly we'll bring that back up at the time. So like Councillor Flynn, given the uniqueness of this property and its historical use, And the interesting piece that because the operation of the school was not sequential from 1918 to now, that there is a 2-year gap in use there, makes the application necessary to the LC. All those things make it unique. So I will support forwarding it to them. And Councillor Flynn, the reason I thought that we not add to that motion is that the last one, as you know, we did add it. And my thought is if we add it to all of them, it kind of takes away the power of when we really need it. So I would be open to discussing it, but I'm pretty sure they're going to come out and check this one out. So I will support the motion to forward it along.
Thank you. Do we have anything further on this? Can we scroll through to where it shows the school that was there? Where's it? So you know where this is, right? You know where that school is now. It's been moved. It was moved out to Haney Heritage Park. So it was preserved. It wasn't just torn down, but it was actually moved. So I just wanted to point that out. Anyway, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator.
Your worship, item 11.2 is purchase of fire apparatus, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Harrison, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the 2018 budget be amended to include an allocation for fire truck number 4 engine replacement in the amount of $21,000 funded from the Emergency Apparatus Reserve Fund, and that the city's purchasing policy be waived in procurement and supply and installation of an engine for fire truck number 4, and to authorize the sole sourcing of the same to Gem Diesel Limited, and that council award the supply and installation to Gem Diesel in accordance with their quote in the amount of $15,176 plus taxes.
Okay. Would the fire chief like to speak to this? Welcome to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, this was certainly an unfortunate and unexpected failure of one of our fire engines. Fortunately, it wasn't en route to a call or at a fire scene. Being that obviously it's very important for us to have it repaired sooner than later, so the proper steps were taken in notifying the CEO and the mayor, authorizing us to have that repair done. And it has been completed and the truck is back in service now.
Oh, thank you. Do we have any questions for the fire chief? Okay. Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for staff? Hearing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your worship, item 11.3 is airport fuel supply terminal, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Lowry, seconded by Councillor Harrison, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the support agreement with Infonet Technology from the date of acceptance estimated to be October 1st, 2018, until such time as the device and software are no longer used, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the merchant agreement with Global Payments for a 1-year period, and optional renewal term of 6 months from the date of acceptance, and further that the 2018 budget be amended to increase the allocation for membership and licenses in the amount of $2,100 funded from the Airport Taxiway Reserve.
Thank you. Chief Financial Officer, wish to speak to this?
Your Worship, in February of 2018, Council resolved to enter into an agreement with Aviation Ground Fueling Technologies for the installation of the new airport fuel supply system. As part of this process, an agreement with Infonet Technologies for the annual fuel management and payment system software and technical support, as well as with Global Payments for the processing of payment transactions is required. In regards to the Infonet technology, the self-serve aviation fueling terminal is a Fuel Commander EMV system. This EMV payment terminal system has essentially control in a computer system that requires certain system software. So Infonet is the manufacturer of the software and which the city must enter an agreement with for ongoing software maintenance and support. The annual software maintenance fee is $1,172, and the annual technical support fee is $900. The 2018 budget for memberships and licenses at the airport is $650 currently. Therefore, staff are recommending a budget amendment of $2,100 funded from the airport taxiway reserve.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from councilors? Councilor Harrison?
Thank you to the Chief Financial Officer, and just a reminder of council about why this is before us. We had an regional airport committee meeting just last week, and I'll speak more to it at council statements, but I'll speak to this item now as this is related. So our grant from the provincial government to update the fuel services at the airport, to remove the in-ground fuel tanks and to put in above-ground fuel tanks, but more importantly to provide a card lock system at the airport. And what that does is the card lock system will allow pilots to fly in at any time, 24 hours a day, and fuel up. Because it'll be just like a truck card lock system where you have your card and you can use a self-serve fuel up system. Presently, we have to have someone at the airport to help you fuel up your airplane. So it should make it far more convenient, and I expect it will increase fuel sales. At the same time, it will be much safer environmentally because the fuel tanks will be above ground and not in the ground. So this is a small piece of the operation of that card lock system.
Thank you. Do we have anything further from council? Hearing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your Worship, item 11.4 is the Recycle BC Statement of Work for Curbside Collection. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Wallace-Richmond, seconded by Councillor Flynn, that the Mayor and Corporate Officer be authorized to execute the Statement of Work for Curbside Collection Services provided by Local Government SOW with Recycle BC effective November 30th, 2018 to December 31st, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Engineering, did you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Worship. So, as you know, we had a partnership with Municipal Materials BC, which is now Recycle BC, and we are essentially their contractor to collect the recyclables around the community, and we get paid for that. So what this is a statement of works. It's part of the master servicing agreement that we have signed. So it's a contract document that we have signed, and this is a subject document which outlines the work that we are required to do in order to receive the payment. So this is an updated statement of works, and essentially the biggest change in this document is that when the new contract comes out in the spring of 2019, when we move to recycling, refuge collection, as well as food waste collection, we will be rolling out these new changes. And the biggest change is that we won't be using plastic bags for the recycling anymore. Recycle BC has allowed us to do that for the term of our existing contract because we negotiated really hard not to have to change it midstream. So they allowed us to use the recycling bags, but now they're moving us to carts. And essentially they're going to be open bins. And for that, the open bins have less contamination rate. The bags have less than the open bins, but there's too much of a problem with the bags having to be opened at the recycle depots and then the bags being disposed of as well. So it's kind of a hit and miss, but they found that the open bins, when the driver is dumping them into the recycle truck, they can see if there's contamination. So there's a better visual review. With the closed bins, typically those are automated systems and those get automatically dumped. The driver's in the vehicle. Sometimes they take a video of that, but there's more chances of contamination because it's not being physically handled. So that is the biggest component of this. As again, it's part of the master servicing agreement that we have with Recycle BC, and it is essentially this will start when our new contract starts in the spring of next year, and it's a 5-year agreement unless otherwise changed.
So that's pretty exciting. We're going to carts, and this is one more way to reduce the use of single-use plastic bags. So I think that's great. Councillor Lavery, to thank
Yes,
you.
thanks, Mayor Cooper, and I certainly support this and thank staff for the work they've done on that. Again, another sidebar for students. So this is kind of like a master agreement contract stuff, mumbo jumbo. But essentially, it covers what's been an incredible initiative. So in 2011, and I want to give a shout out to Councillor Eliason and the previous council, we got curbside recycling going. So that's kind of like already the past. The present is that it's working. This document shows that a year ago, on an annual basis, 110 kilograms per household was diverted from the landfill to recycling, which is pretty big, and we can do more. And the future of all this is that we are, and I'll look to the Director of Engineering to confirm this, but next year, 2019, we'll be starting curbside organic pickup, which not only reduces significantly, and I think it's about 40% of the load going into the landfill, but it also is a significant and probably the most significant impact that we can do on greenhouse gas emissions. Organics going into the landfill create methane, and I believe, again, that's 27 times more potent than the composting approach for what's been proposed. So a contract, but it really represents a significant, in the last 7 years and going forward, initiative for curbside recycling and environmental approach to this. So again, that's the sidebar. Thank you to staff, and I support this.
Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you to staff as well. And I agree with you that environmentally it's certainly the way to go because we eliminate those bags. A question to staff through you. So each household will receive one open bin, is that right?
Your Worship, that's correct. The city will either be, we're still working on some of the details because the contract won't be until the spring. The idea is that the city will supply one bin to each household, or that, that the bin might be credited, so that the bill might be credited for the homeowner to purchase one bin. We're still working out those details, but ultimately there will be a blue bin at each household for recycling, and then you can add more blue bins if you choose.
Are the bins on wheels?
No, they're not. They're just, they're a static bin. So they're very similar to an open top recycling bin that you see in office spaces. So there probably will be a need to add bins depending on how much you recycle.
Okay, that was my next question, because when I drive down the street on recycling day, I see some people have 10 bags out there. So if we give them one bin, they're going to have to purchase 9 more. Is that right?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. All right. So that's going to cause us to make sure that we are current with our recycling. Recycling will be every week instead of every second week. Is that right?
That's correct as well.
Okay, so we're cutting that timeline in half. But I know in my house I'll have to be more diligent and make sure I do it on a more daily basis. So just to understand, there'll be no lining on the inside of the bin.
No, the bin is actually, like I said, it's one of those blue bins with a big recycling sign on it. Those are the ones that we'll probably end up supplying to the homeowners.
Okay.
You can purchase them at some of the local hardware dealers or Tire or Home Depot, whatever you want. And essentially, we are responsible for supplying at least one bin to the home.
Okay, and they're about the size of a garbage can, right?
A
right?
bit smaller than that,
Okay.
actually. You can get different sizes, and that would be up to the homeowner.
All right.
As long as they're not over a weight that the driver can actually pick up.
Okay, that was my next follow-up. So the household could, if they wished, purchase a larger bin, perhaps on wheels, as long as the weight was not too heavy.
That's correct.
Okay, and then I just dump my newspapers and my clean milk cartons and all that right into the bin with no lining.
That's correct, yeah. It'll be your responsibility to clean the bins if you make a mess in them.
All right. Garbage is one of my duties at my house, so I just want to make sure, got to consider whether to vote for this or not. No, I mean, I think environmentally it's where we're headed, and as Councillor Lavery said, we're starting organics, And so this would take place at the same time, July 1st.
Your worship, that's correct. This will all be, one thing I would like to add, and it's mentioned in the report, that there will be a lot of educational components to this moving forward and during the process. Because of the organic component, there's going to be a need for education. It's a new feature for the service, and we'd like to potentially hire a student for the summer to help us orientate and educate.
Yeah, I really like that part of the report. The student, I know when they did the pilot, that was most effective, wasn't it? Going door to door and talking to people.
Yes, Your Worship. We had a really successful pilot, which was happened near the Piccadilly, the Ridge area. And we had a city staff member, and then CSRD provided us with some part-time help from one of their students. And it was very successful. And the feedback we got from the residents that it was most helpful in the fact that they could actually talk to somebody and ask questions. So I'm not sure if we'll need to go door to door to everyone, but if there's a need, we'll be there. And I think that's the approach we're looking at.
Okay, just one more question, Your Worship. So I think it is important to the communication piece, and people are going to want to try to time their recycling bags to run out about that time. You can use those recycling bags for garbage afterwards, right?
Potentially, yes. They're still a plastic bag, so they can always be reused.
Okay, but giving advance notice as much as possible might be helpful there. All right, thank you, Your Worship. I think we're moving in the right direction, and I will support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Your Worship. And actually, Councillor Harrison asked just about all my questions. The only other question I would add is we are going to recycling every week. Are we moving away from garbage every week because of the increased recycling? Or are we going to stay one bag per week?
Your Worship, it will be once every 2 weeks, and we are working on that as well. That's what most communities do when they go to the organic component. Right. So the food waste goes in a smaller bin. Therefore, there should be less garbage with the food waste and the recycling component.
And the food waste will be every week?
Every week as well.
Okay. So basically flipping around what we're doing now, where it's garbage every week and recycling unlimited every 2 weeks. Recycling is going to continue unlimited. We're going to be adding yard waste or organics. Sorry, not yard waste.
That's food waste, totally
food waste. That's what I meant. And the individual will get one recycling bin and can buy as many more as they want. Because I guarantee I'm going to need more because I'm one of those that has like 8-10 bags out. Not every week, no, but I think most people will, or many people will have to add one. And all we're really talking about is replacing the cost of blue bags by the cost of a blue bin that doesn't have to be bought every week or put out every week.
That's correct. The bin itself will help in not having to purchasing blue bags and more plastic. So.
The one question that comes to mind, because I have the same duty as Councillor Harrison, but I don't perform it maybe quite as well as when it comes to recycling, is when you break down boxes, will they go inside the blue bin or will they sit underneath it, or how will that be handled?
We'll have some educational component for it. Typically, they can actually be piled beside it. They don't have to go in the blue bin, as long as they're neatly stacked and whatnot.
Yeah, I've had mine rejected. I know what you can't do. So, Councillor Eliason isn't here. We're way nicer to him when he's not here than when he is. But honestly, that decision in January of 2011, I was on that council, and at the end of the day, it took Councillor Eliason a long time to convince some of us older folks at this table that the cost would ever be worth it, and that it would really be an improvement on the situation. So I'm going to say right now, Councillor Eliason was right, and I was very old dog hesitant to learn new tricks. But I think the momentum that we've created here and that staff has done, and with the push, most of the push by Councillor Eliason, has been very positive. And I think this is another step in the right direction, even though I was dragged kicking and screaming back in the late 2010. But he was right, and this is a great step forward.
Thank you. Do we have anything further? I think what I did back then too was bring in awareness. I mean, there was lots of people just wanted to recycle, but they needed that little extra push. So our community's come a long way. So yes, thank you to Councillor Lassen for that. So hearing no further speakers, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator.
Your worship, item 11.5 is budget amendment for replacement of unit number 46 truck and crane. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Harrison, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the 2018 budget be amended to reflect required funding for the replacement of unit number 46, 2012 Silverado C3500 truck together with crane dump box and required vehicle modifications in the amount of $90,000 allocated from the Equipment Reserve Fund.
Okay. Engineering.
Thank you, Worship. Typically, this type of request would come at budget time. Unfortunately, we really need to get this back in the fleet as soon as possible. This vehicle was involved in an accident, which ended up totaling off the vehicle. We've got a claim in with ICBC, basically a settlement for the vehicle, and we're looking at topping that claim up with funds from the Equipment Replacement Reserve to start ordering a new vehicle. So hopefully we can get it back before spring. This vehicle is our parks maintenance vehicle, and its primary duty, as mentioned in the report, is for servicing the garbage cans around the parks. And currently we're doing that with the loader and backhoe, so it's costing us a fair amount of money. So it'd be nice to replace this quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Do we have anything from council? Just seems like, yeah, we have to do this. So I will call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your worship, item 11.6 is Medford Dam berm access flow and flow pond upgrades. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Wallace Richmond, that council award the Medford Dam berm project to LB Chapman Construction in accordance with the terms of their proposal in the amount of $175,000 plus taxes.
Engineering?
Your Worship, if I could get my screen on. So, Your Worship, to appease Councillor Flynn, who likes drawings and maps, we're providing some here. So, this is essentially Medford Dam. This is our secondary water source for the community. Although it's a small water source, it's still very vital to our system. And the dam is located in our watershed, in the East Canoe watershed. This is Klahani Park, city's gravel pit. And then these are the canoe, South Canoe trails. So looking at the dam, it's a large pool of water. It's fed from natural sources through the canoe watershed. This area here is the spillway, and the dam top, and then the bottom of the dam, there's actually a release, and that is essentially what this is the release at the bottom. Now what this is we had a dam safety review back in 2013, and there was a few deficiencies that we had to start working on. So we've been dealing with this for quite some time now. The design was completed last year, and we just received approval on the design from the provincial dam safety officer. And so it was tendered out, it was put in the budget, it was approved, and it was tendered out this year. Now what's going to happen to this is we're going to relocate the toe of the dam. So the bottom of the dam is going to move out. And so that spillway that I showed you is this area here, and that's now going to be relocated further to the west. And then this whole area is going to be filled in. So going back to the photo, this is going to be moved out, and then this area here is going to be strengthened. So this did go out to tender on September 13th. It closed, and we had 4 bidders. And as you can see in the report, LB Chapman was the low bid, and we're looking for approval to proceed with that construction. And it will be started in October 1st.
Okay, thank you. Council, do we have any questions? Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Worship. And kind of the usual question, it seems every time we put one of these, and this isn't a huge project, but decent-sized projects, we kind of get one or two bids that are quite low and one or two that are quite high. And the good news is it looks like the bid being recommended is below the engineer's original cost. Is that correct?
That's a very good observation, Your Worship. Typically it depends on how busy the contractors are. If they need the job, they might bid a little lower. If they don't need it and maybe they're looking to make some cash, then they're going to be a little higher, obviously.
Yeah, and I was actually going to make that comment for the new students in the gallery that quite often the bids are a reflection of how busy the companies are and whether they really need the work or want the work. So it's nice to see a couple bids under the estimated cost, if I'm reading your report correctly.
That's correct.
I will vote in support.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. LB Chapman Construction, where are they out of?
I can't remember. Just let me look at my report here. I can't remember where they were from, actually. I want to say Revelstoke, but I would have to confirm that.
Sure. If it's not handy, you can let me know later. It's no troubles. The other question I had is that the report does say that the submissions were reviewed and evaluated by the city's project manager, Gentech Engineering, and often there is a schematic where we don't just look at the bottom line price. Is that the case here, where other things were evaluated to determine the submission that we would accept, or was it just based on price?
This one is based on price and experience, and all of the contractors had that.
Okay, so each of them met
That's
the criteria that we wanted. All right, thank you, Your Worship. I will support the motion.
Okay. Do we have anything further from council? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Administrator?
Your Worship, that brings us to item 13, council statements.
Okay. Council statements. Councillor Lavery?
Thank you, Mayor Cooper, and I'll start off actually with two items and two items only, and I think probably we'll talk about UBCM when other councillors will talk about that. The first one, and it's for our table, put in your calendars October 15th. And the reason I'm saying that, Mayor Cooper, yourself, Councillor Wallace Richmond, and I managed to meet with the director of the Housing Hub at UBCM, and he's going to come up and speak to not only the Housing Task Force, but we're suggesting a much larger list of invitees, and we'll meet in here. The Housing Hub focuses, when you look at the housing spectrum of homeless, vulnerable, supported housing, it is an initiative that focuses on entry-level marketing, entry-level rental and entry-level home ownership. It's the mid-market part of the housing spectrum. Their approach is to incentivize prospective homeowners by having a sort of a first and second mortgage sort of system, and the second mortgage actually is taken on by the province, guaranteed by the province at provincial rates with payoff times, and so it lowers the cost of entry. And incentivization for developers for accessing credit and financing as well, perhaps even up to a 20% incentivizing to get developers involved in cost per door. So the idea is for not only the Housing Task Force to hear this, but this is pretty key information that our development sector, our financial agents, our real estate sector need to hear. I think it would behoove council to, if you can make it, to come there at that time. The gentleman that's doing it is doing it for the province, but he is hitting Kelowna, and then he's coming up to Salmon Arm to do it. So this is quite a coup to get him here, and I think there's going to be valuable information. So that's the first note. The second one is more Okanagan Regional Library related, and you may have noticed in the news that there's a refurbishing reno about to take place in the next few months. That's mainly associated with the signing of a new lease, and I know that we have talked about that in camera in terms of some of the lease stuff, but a new lease has been signed for 5 years, plus a 5-year to renew option. So that's item number one. Item number two is that the budget, because of the election cycle right now, the budget for the Okanagan Regional Library has been approved. I did not have a chance to bring it, as I have in the previous years, to this table because it came out 4 days before our meeting and in between our council sessions. A 2.55% budget increase was approved. That's higher than the normal 1.98 or 2.0. A half of that 0.5% is directly related to security needs in the Vernon Library and the Kelowna Library for monitoring and supervision by contracting out security staff. And that's sort of a sign of the times right now. That will be, last year that was dealt with internally within the available rejigging as we do of reserve accounts and things like that. But this year it's an addition, so 2.55%. The population increase that we've noticed through BC Stats of Salmon Arm being the largest growing community, over 5,000 by 9.3%, I believe it was, has some good news in that it increases our votes on the Okanagan Regional Library. So on these organizations, you get a weighted vote often depending on your population. So we get a few more. It doesn't really change the overall percentage, but we have a few more votes on the weighted thing. The bad news, because we have increased population and our average assessment went up more than other communities, is our levy will go up a little bit as well. The information will be coming to our Chief Financial Officer shortly, but that's where we are with the Okanagan Regional Library.
Thank you.
And that's it for me.
So just for students too, we do have representatives on a number of boards, such as the Okanagan Regional Library. We also have a number of committees. As you heard Councillor Harrison saying, he was the representative on the airport committee and on the Roots and Blues, and so there's a number of them, and the same with actually all of council members, and then they bring back information to us because we can't all be everywhere. So, Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. So I do have a Fall Fair Committee meeting in the first week in October, but as you've probably read in the news, the Fall Fair was very successful, 121st annual, with attendance up around 1,000 people, we think. So great job, the weather held, and again, the volunteers did a fantastic job, as did the board members. Lots of positive feedback on the Fall Fair this year. I did want to talk just a little more about the Airport Operations Committee meeting, to let council know we are working on a draft budget presently, and as council's aware, whatever budget we come up with has to go to the Shuswap Airport Commission, because we share the operational costs with the CSRD. But there's been some good work done on the budget, and I will give more details once we get closer to a finished account. The piece I want to report on is about tree removal, and I know that council's very interested in getting the PAPI lights back on at the airport so that the emergency aircraft can land when it's dark. So we've been working diligently on it, and thanks to the Director of Engineering and Public Works for all of his work, and also Rob Hine and now Darren Giroux, who is also contributing. So we expect that tree removal, tree topping, and tree removal should be complete by the end of November is our hope, which will allow us to reapply to have the lights turn back on. For council's information, the costs of tree removal is close to $300,000 is what we've spent. Of course, we're responsible for about 50% of that. And so that's causing us to, certainly as a committee, to think about the future and how we can budget for that and whether we can somehow decrease those costs. One of our challenges is, although we have covenants over the properties where we have to take the trees down, not all property owners allow you to cut them off at the stump. So it's very expensive to cut tops off trees. That's one problem. And the second thing is when you cut the top off them, they like to grow fast. And so 10 years down the road, you have to do it again. So we are looking at all of those challenges. But the good news is we have worked through the majority of this challenge and expect to have the lights back on soon. The other project that we're working on is the BC Air Access Grant, and thanks to Council for accepting that grant from the federal government, provincial government, and also freeing up monies for us to have a matching amount to start Taxiway Charlie. So we've talked about that at the committee, and of course that will open up hangar possibilities and increase revenues there. Last small item, as far as fuel sales at the airport this summer, it was actually about an average year. While it was very smoky here, most of our monies are generated from aircraft who fight fires, and the fires were not close enough for the aircraft to land at our airport and refuel, nor was it quick enough for the most part. So it was about an average year for fuel sales there. I think those are the highlights of the airport committee, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace-Richmond?
Thanks, Your Worship. Just briefly, for council statements is really our opportunity to report back on any of our committee work. There wasn't a great deal of committee work for me this summer, although every single committee meeting I went to had something to do with housing, so we keep learning. And I just wanted to welcome our youth council to a new year, and I'm looking at you, listening, watching you listen to all of these bits of advice and information, and please don't feel like this doesn't. Please don't feel as if this doesn't make any sense, that it won't make sense soon. So you can certainly talk to Gray. The first time I sat here, I wasn't really sure what I was doing or what I was doing here or what most of it even meant, but I promise you it gets better and it will all make sense. And we really do need your input to grow the city. So thank you for taking the time to spend some of this time with us.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Flynn?
Yeah, I too want to welcome the Youth Council, and I've said this in the past term, that thanks to Councillor Lavery and Mr. Gom and others, and the school district, it was one of the most exciting initiatives I've seen, and it's a real positive, and I think we got more people here this year than last year, so it sounds like the excitement is at the school level too, so that's great news. Hopefully one meeting doesn't bore you totally, but we've covered a lot of area today and a lot of different things, so that just tells you how exciting and interesting this is. But I did have a question for Councillor Harrison and a comment. I don't think it can be emphasized how important getting those trees topped is, and I've seen the work being done on the airport from the golf course, and I know how much work the golf course did last year. My 27-year-old or 28-year-old son would not be alive if the medevac couldn't have come in at night, because he was flown from here to St. Paul's in critical condition at 11:30 at night in the winter. So I don't think we can emphasize how important it is to get that done, and I guess not trying to upset people who want to protect their trees, but I guess I really wonder why there isn't legislation that overrides a homeowner's right to have trees when it comes to public safety. So I don't know if that's something a future council can work on, but that concerns me, that homeowners can control whether we have our airport open at night, and I know we're working on it, but I just can't emphasize enough the importance of that 24-hour access for emergency. And then that brings up another question, is when you look at the budget, obviously budgets have expenses and they have revenues. Is the budget being looked at on the revenue side for the next year?
I'll answer your first question first, I think. First of all, I would like to say that we have had a very good cooperation from most of the property owners that have trees on their property. And we're talking about multiple property owners, including the golf course. We have had certainly more difficult negotiations with some property owners on tree removal and tree heights. And the height at which you can remove the trees and that you need to remove the trees is very complicated, so I'm not going to get into the graphing here. But appreciate your comments, and I think we're moving positively forward in that regard. I wasn't sure about your question about revenues. Could you just rephrase it?
Well, when we look at budget items, some of them have revenue factors like gas. You've mentioned that revenues weren't up in gas, but they were fairly flat. Like hangar rentals, like fees for landing, all of those things. Is that being reviewed in the next budget process?
Okay, thank you for being specific. Yes, absolutely. We are certainly looking at those revenues and specifically the ones you mentioned. Okay. And I will report back to you how that goes. But I do expect there'll be increases in some of those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything further? So I did attend the Shuswap Watershed Council meeting, and they will be coming and presenting to council in October. I think was it 19th? On October 19th, yeah. So they can give you updates where we are, and also review the. They did a review, so they will bring that to review information to council as well. So that will happen there. Also, we did hear that the Trans-Canada West, or Salmon West project has gone to tender, and that they'll leave it for tender for 4 weeks, and then they're going to look at it and try and get it out as quickly as they can, so that project can get started. So it was very nice to hear from them. And let's see, I guess that's good for now. I've been keeping track of words for the that you've heard today. I can give you this list if you want. You might not be able to read my writing. So we talked about drones, zoning, increasing densities, new cemeteries, green burials, business plans, readings, 1, 2, 3, 4, election officer, processing of cannabis license fees, and that there's already 3 people looking for those. Invasive species, council initiatives, conflict of interest, ALR, DCCs, purchasing policies, reserve accounts, housing spectrum, council committees, and representatives on other committees, council representatives, airport tree removal, and the last thing that we haven't talked about yet, which we will, is about fire smart plans. So So if you're not overwhelmed already, well, let's try and figure out something else to throw at you. Anyway, this is how complex, and it's just a sample of how complex our city councilor's job. And we really thank all of staff for all the reports they do, all the work they do to bring this to us so that we can make these decisions. So, Councillor Flynn said he had one more thing to say. So
I just wanted to add one more hyphenated word to the list, preload, because what has been approved or put out to tender is just the preload of the construction.
Absolutely.
My guess is the construction after the preload sits for a year will take some time to go to bid. So
absolutely.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Administrator.
Your Worship, the next item 15 is Salmon Arm Secondary Youth Council.
Okay.
Council, thanks for having us back, and Mayor Cooper, Your Worship.
We're really happy you're here.
I'll make it brief because I've told the students today that we're just staying for the afternoon. I sprung this on them a week ago that we'd be coming today. We will set up the schedule for the remaining year after the next election. Our duty now will be to monitor that election. We are going to the all candidates meeting, and we will be at the election balloting station on the 20th of October. So we're very excited about that. And then we'll probably load up and be at 2 meetings shortly after the election so that we can see the new council and the previous council and see if there's any similarities or differences. So we're really looking forward to all the action that's going to be happening. So
to have this on an election year, they're very fortunate.
I just had to change the whole curriculum. Like it was just so much fun. So, but what I'd like to do today, we have 10 out of 13 of our youth council here. 2 had to leave early because they did have prior obligations, and 1 is away today.
He has mentioned that to me. So, but 2 are also only here for half a year. They've asked to do a 2-credit option, so we'll have 11 for the entire year. And we'll be setting up in the second semester again, we'll be setting up the shadowing. And we've have some other things in store too. So because we've got a few more students, we can do a little more. So it'll be a lot of fun. And next year, I might add, we're going to add probably, I've talked to Superintendent Jory with the school district, and I'll talk to the new trustees that come in this next election, and we'll probably have the grade 11s monitor and follow trustees, and we'll have the grade 12s follow and monitor the mayor and council. So that's our next step. So, but if I could, we're going to start with the back row here, and they're just going to come up and tell you a little bit about themselves each, and very briefly, and then Gray will take over as always. So, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Jurassic. I'm in grade 12 and I live in Salmon Arm up a Hillcrest. Just something that interests me about being in the student council is just how the ability to learn about how the council functions, and also to learn about possibly going into running for mayor or council to help give back to my community at a later date. And after seeing the complexity of this meeting, it still interests me, so very informative to watch. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Blanca Stepankova. I'm in grade 11. I live in Canoe on the main street, and I'm really interested in politics and the youth council because I'm curious to see what kind of topics our local government discusses and debates. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dylan Paquette. I'm from Sunnybray, and I'm in grade 12. And part of the reason that I want to be in this class is because I just want to know how I can be involved in the politics in my own community.
Hi, my name's Luke Rivette. I am in grade 12. I live in Anglemont, which is a fair ways from here. I think like every one of my peers, and I'm sure every one of you, I just want to learn how I can make change in our community and maybe even on a bigger scale in the world. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben Van Bergic, grade 12 student and from Salmon Arm, and I enjoyed the Civics 11 class with Mr. Gom, so I thought it'd be interesting to do this.
Cool.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Zachary Nath, and I am in grade 11. I come from Salmon Arm, up at the top of Lyman Hill. And I believe that politics is very interesting because a more proactive personal approach in politics serves as not only a potential career choice, but also a way to give back to my community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Lang. I live in Salmon Arm, South Canoe. The reason why I want to take part in youth council, it's because I want to see, I'm very interested, and I want to see how this committee impact the city and how youth can contribute in that. So I'm very excited, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Johnston. I live kind of up from Coyote Park in Salmon Arm. I'm in grade 12 and I'm in the youth council because of my interest in how local government functions and what I can do to be a more engaged member of the community and how I can be politically active and aware of what's going on in Salmon Arm. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Marissa Materi. I'm from Hillcrest in Salmon Arm, right up at the top of the hill there. I'm in grade 12. I do 4-H and Army Cadets outside of that, so I'm already pretty involved in the community, and I wanted to involve myself more so and just kind of give back to, just kind of give back to the city and the community. Yeah. Thank you.
And Gray.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gray Sims. I'm in grade 12. I'm a Silver Creekian, the CSRD's electoral area D. I'm so happy to be back this year. It was such a great experience last year, and I'm really looking forward to this year, to monitoring the election. I attended UBCM, as you all know, and I've prepared a little report, somewhat little, that I'd like to share with you. I'd like to start off by thanking SILGA for the wonderful opportunity that they offer to youth in our area. I know that Councillor Eliason isn't here, who's kind of one of our liaisons with SILGA, but I'd really like to thank them. It's initiatives like those that allow interested young people to become involved in their local governments and feel like a part of the community and the province they grow up in. The idea of applying to attend UBCM came from my friend Ali Landy, who you all know. She was a member last year. She attended the 2017 conference with SILGA and the City of Salmon Arm, and after hearing of her experience, I was incredibly excited of the prospect of perhaps attending myself. I mentioned this to my cousin Carolyn Black, who works at the TNRD, and she got in touch with my CSRD director, Renee Talbot. It was the start of what would ultimately become my trip to Whistler. It was also last fall that our school decided to pilot this course. So that built connections for me with our Salmon Arm city government. I met with the CSRD board in mid-August, and I was introduced to their directors, along with Director Talbot, who would be my mentor at UBCM. I feel certain that one of the reasons that I enjoyed UBCM so much was because I already had these established connections with the City of Salmon Arm, with the CSRD, and with the TNRD. And that allowed me to attend a variety of meetings and sessions with many different groups. Being able to accompany different local government delegates allowed me to get a broader understanding of the issues spread throughout British Columbia. And I found that while the different municipalities and regional districts are unique, they share many of the same complex and challenging issues. In my mind, this is one of my most notable takeaways from UBCM. I heard so many conversations between officials from different areas of the province comparing notes as to how they tackled specific problems. And it made me realize that for all the sessions, the workshops, the speeches, and the resolutions, the heart of the conference was the networking amongst the delegates. I spent much of my time meeting people from across the province. This was one of my favorite parts of the convention. I attended many of the receptions held during the week, and it was at these that I met the Premier, Minister Selina Robinson, UBCM President Arjun Singh, and many, many others. I met ministers at ministers' meetings, and through the many networking opportunities there were, I met so many wonderful people, including MLAs, councillors, electoral area directors, and governmental staff from around the province. On the Monday, I went on the agricultural tour, and I met like-minded people like myself, farmers like myself, and people who are interested in farming, and I was amazed at the variety of topics discussed while on the tour. I was continued to be amazed throughout the entire conference. On the Tuesday, I got my first taste of lobbying the provincial government when I accompanied the CSRD to their meeting with the Minister of Agriculture. They were discussing abattoir regulations and legalizing the on-site kill of meat animals on the farm. I was really impressed to hear this as a topic. This is a topic that's often been discussed at my family dinner table, and I was pleased to give my opinion as a farmer in support of the CSRD's request. I have strange family dinner table conversations.
Farmer family dinner conversations.
For me, this was one of the highlights of the convention, and touched on one of the key ways, in my mind, to get youth involved. Listening, as the Honourable Lana Popham did during our meeting, or as the City of Salmon Arm does with our youth council, it shows youth that their voice is being heard and their opinion matters. So I was really, really appreciative that I had the chance to speak during that ministers' meeting. My biggest realization from the convention builds on what I've been learning from taking part here in the Salmon Arm City Youth Council. The local government has a much larger role in our societies than many give them credit for. In Salmon Arm, I witnessed firsthand the numerous decisions made by council that affects their residents. And I was ever more astounded when I came to realize that You are, in fact, one cog in the many gears that work as a collective for the residents of British Columbia. It was really, really interesting for me to be able to work with the CSRD and the TNRD, who are regional districts, and they face different problems. And so I could compare those to municipal issues and regional district issues, not only in our local area, but across the province as well. Together, those municipalities and electoral areas have a far greater impact than most British Columbians comprehend. Over this past week since the conference, I've been thinking a lot about the convention's theme, communication, collaboration, and cooperation. A theme I admit I fully didn't understand it when I read it back in July. Now looking back, I can say that I do understand it, but without having been able to go to UBCM, I don't think I ever would have understood how vital those 3 C's are to our province. I believe now that I understand the theme enough to make my own extrapolations on what those 3 C's mean for someone like myself, a youth interested in politics. It's through those 3 practices, communication, collaboration, and cooperation, that I believe governments, whether at the local, provincial, or federal levels, can engage and connect with youth. First, we have to target efforts towards engaging students who show interest, and then open discussion with them after the opportunities, and offer them opportunities to get involved. This is where collaboration comes in. For students to have the desire to stay involved, they need to feel that their contribution is being taken seriously. As I mentioned previously, it's so very encouraging to know that your opinion is being heard. Members of the community, youth and adults alike, are much more likely to take an active role in their community when they know that their hard work is being appreciated. That brings us to cooperation, the key to any successful enterprise. Different groups have to be able to work together to create beneficial change. And it is through this sharing of thoughts, knowledge, and opinions that many great ideas are conceived and implemented. Youth are yet another resource to be tapped for their perspectives in order to make well-rounded decisions for the current generations and up-and-coming generations as well. The initiative taken here by Mr. Gom and the City of Salmon Arm, as well as that taken by the Southern Interior Local Government Association, are such positive steps towards getting youth interested and involved, and I'm such an advocate for initiatives like these across the province. It quite astounded me that Silga was the only local government association that has a program to send youth to UBCM. So I'm so grateful that I live in the Southern Interior, so grateful that I have City Council who is so supportive of youth involvement in their community. It's so wonderful to be here, so wonderful to know that as a youth, my opinion does matter, and our opinion does matter. When we discuss, when we consider things, it's not all in vain. We can come here and make an impact on our community. So I'd really like to thank you all for that. I also wanted to thank Councillor Jameson, because I know he's not running in the upcoming election. He's not here right now, but I'd like to thank him certainly for all his work that he's put in. And I'd like to thank all of you for the past year and wish you all the best in the upcoming election. I really look forward to working with the new council come November.
So we're extremely excited that you're here too, and to hear from you, young people that want to make a difference in their community. You're already thinking in that mode. You know, that is just so incredible for us. And again, just making some of the notes where you said Silga, CSRD, TNRD, MLAs, ministers, UBCM, without a hesitation, and you knew everyone what they are. So you know that's pretty exciting too. We really appreciate your input. As you know from last year, we included the youth in the branding project for one, and a number of other initiatives, and your voice matters, and that's what we want you to know. And so everybody that comes here, we're just so thankful that you're here. We want to hear from you, because we're growing this community, but we're growing this community for the future, and you guys are the future, right? For today, obviously, but also for the future, because we have to think ahead. As mayor and councillors, we have to always be thinking ahead. So having you here, listening and learning, and it's very satisfying to know that our youth really want to do this, and we're able to share. As you see, we couldn't stop ourselves. Oh, we have to tell you about this. Oh, this is what this means, right? So we're excited that you're here, and thank you very much. I just would like to open it up. Any of the other councillors have anything they'd like to say? Or maybe we've said it all. Councillor Flynn?
Well, all I would say is I've done numerous reports on UBCM and FCM, and none of mine have been that good. So great job. Clearly, you've learned a lot. And I do like the campaigning you were doing on behalf of our community with Selena Robinson on Thursday evening, because I was teaching her, trying to teach her how to jive, and you were teaching her how to dance. And I think that's gone a long ways to, going to go a long ways to helping us out. But I saw you involved, I saw you engaged, I saw you having fun and meeting people, and I think your summary is as good as I've heard in 13 years at this table from anybody about a conference. So well done.
Thank you. I know, I think we really made a good showing on the dance floor that night.
Good to hear. Is there anything further from council? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. I think we have one more item on our agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship, under other business, 18.1 is the Community Resilience Investment Program. And this is on the agenda simply to see if there's any direction from council on this.
Okay. So council members, do we want to see if we can move ahead with this? Councillor Lavery?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thanks for staff including this document. I'm going to summarize this really quickly, partly for the gallery, partly for us as well. In early May, and I actually was up at Sullivan at the high school, we had a discussion and a motion to move forward with a co-application with Nisconlith about, at that time, what was called a community wildfire protection plan. Knowing that the government had paused that plan and was going to come out with something different. At UBCM, the announcement of what was different came out, and that's what's in front of us here. And I think actually it's got a great comparison, it's the first I've seen it, on page 2 of the difference between the new program, which is called the Community Resilience Investment Program, and what the old plan was. And I'm not going to go in that today, and I've just had a chance to look at it, so I think that we'll all process it. I think there has been work done on this, but I would suggest that, and again, another little sidebar, being on the SILGA board, we had separate meetings that were more regional in nature, and while the city didn't meet with Flinroe Forestry, we actually had a chance to meet there and had a few spare moments. So I asked the Salmon Arm question, look, we're interested in applying for this new program coming out. What about co-application? And the answer was, groups will apply individually, but then you stack them and submit them together. So Nisconlith, if they're going to apply, if we are going to apply, we would stack them. I think it's a slightly different layout right now, a scenario right now. What I would like to request is that, and I'm volunteering here, but that Mayor Cooper, you were in the past going to be working with the First Nations community on that aspect of it. That's still happening. I think it's a slightly different calculus. I do not have my head around it at this stage. I've had some initial discussions with our Chief Administrative Officer, but that we appoint a council member to work with our CAO to come back with a recommendation at the next council meeting to council about how to proceed with this application. The deadline date is December 7th. This is happening in the middle of an election. This is happening with almost every other community going for this funding, and we need to just determine the best way to navigate it. So that's the first point I would like to make, and I would be that contact if that was the will of council, and then I have a second item after that.
Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks, Councillor Lavery, for your leadership on this project, not just today, but over the last year. So I would move that we appoint Councillor Lavery to work with staff on the Community Resilience Investment Program application and to bring a recommendation back to Council.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Flynn? Okay. Anyone wish to speak to the motion then? Councillor Flynn?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity for the youth and others to just talk about assigning any one of us to be in charge or carry on an initiative. if we tried to be experts on everything that comes to this table, I'm sure you can see from today that that would be impossible. And I didn't speak to the housing initiative and all the work that's been done by Councillor Wallace Richmond and Councillor Lavery in the last 6 months on housing. And I know very little about housing. I live in one and I see them all over, but their expertise on that issue has helped us as a council go to UBCM and present a strong position and work with MLAs and ministries to try to get our community prioritized for housing solutions. This is the same. Councillor Lavery has been passionate about this. We all have our passions here at the table. And I am extremely confident that he will move this forward with staff very positively. So I will vote in support of the motion and can't wait to learn more about it, but not too much about it because he's going to know more.
Okay, would anyone else like to speak to it? Okay, hearing none, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Worship. And again, this document is new to me as well, but I noticed on the front page of our document there is a workshop in Kamloops, October 24th, 25th. At this stage right now, I don't know, and it's something I would like to talk with the Chief Administrative Officer about the worthwhileness of staff or our fire chief attending this, and so we could report back that as well. And that might even, well, it'll be after the election, it might be even consideration for one council member who will be, because we'll know by that time, who will be on the new council, perhaps trying to get that continuity there. There's no doubt in talking and in the ministerial presentations and in the staff presentations afterwards, the need to develop not only a fire smart activity coordination, but almost a working committee to an advisory committee is going to be key in the future for future funding. So I'm hoping that the CAO and we can come back with a recommendation on that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Administrator. I think we're ready to adjourn.
Yes, I have a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Flynn, seconded by Councillor Lavery, that the regular council meeting of September 24, 2018 be adjourned.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Oh, yeah, we'll do it. We'll just go touch base.
Hopefully we had that on video, but that's